So, lads, there is a WNBA team that have been very, very, very much in, like, they made it clear that they want Caitlin Clark, or they're eventually going to want Caitlin Clark. Along those lines, they made it very, very clear.
Well. Coach Stephanie White thought she had everything all figured out with her superstar player Caitlin Clark, but sometimes what goes around comes around. And coaches have to take back what they said. Clark is hurt again with another groin injury. And suddenly those friendly meetings with the New York Liberty team don't look so innocent anymore. You can see what's happening here, folks.
Clark in the bowels of the Barclays Center with Liberty coach Sandy Brondello and Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. I'm just having a little fun.
Do you think Caitlin Clark is already thinking about leaving Indiana? After seeing how Coach Stephanie White has handled her getting hurt, let's be really honest here. Stephanie White's way of dealing with Caitlin Clark has been about as smooth as rough sandpaper on smooth silk. Clark has missed many games this season because of groin injuries, and White's response has been really disappointing. When your best player keeps getting hurt and you act like it's no big deal, you have serious problems.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of physicality that they're able to play with against her. I knew it as an opponent, and I see it as her coach. And I'm not exactly sure why, but it just is what it is. And we've got to help her learn to adjust and use it against them in certain ways.
The pattern has been super clear from the very first day. There are signs that White and Clark don't totally agree about Clark's job on the team. White keeps trying to make Clark play without the ball, even though Clark clearly said she's at her best when she has the ball in her hands, especially when the team is running fast. But does White listen? Of course not. She's too busy using her own system to realize she's got an amazing talent who needs the ball too. Be really good. Clark has missed 10 games this season because of injuries, including a previous left leg injury. 10 games. That's not just bad luck, that's a pattern. And what's White's reaction when people ask about Clark's injury problems? We went through some shooting practice. She still hasn't gone full speed in a practice or played defense with the team. Really comforting. There, coach.
Specifics of, like, did she have imaging today? Was it just see how she's feeling? And I know you have a game tonight first, but is there any discussion yet about this weekend with her? Because obviously she's a huge part of All-Star.
No discussion yet about this weekend. There was imaging done, and obviously ruling her out for tonight, but there hasn't been any discussion beyond tonight.
The most telling part, Clark couldn't play Wednesday night's game against the New York Liberty in Brooklyn after hurting her right groin in the final minute of Tuesday's 85-77 win over the Connecticut Sun. She was literally crying on the bench, and White's response was basically just shrugging her shoulders. White told reporters after Tuesday's game that Clark felt a little something in her groin. A little something. Your star player is crying on the bench, and you call it a little something. How out of touch can you be? This is absolutely shocking. Here's where it gets really interesting. The New York Liberty have been circling around Clark like sharks, and honestly, who can blame them? New York Liberty CEO Kyle Clark says that Clark has had an amazing impact on recent business growth and came in and lit a fire. They see the value that White apparently doesn't fully appreciate. Remember when Clark scored a season-high 32 points and tied a career-high 7 three-pointers when she came back from injury as the Indiana Fever beat the New York Liberty 100-88. That was Clark showing what she can do when she's healthy and in the right mindset. But what happened next? More injuries, more missed games, and more questionable coaching decisions from White.
We have just seen the New York Liberty players after the game meeting up with Caitlin Clark. It is Stewie, it is Sabrina Ionescu, there is Sandy Brondello. And by the way, Stewie is not leaving New York the rest of her career. That is one thing that I will be 99% sure of. Stewie is not leaving. New York. Sabrina is not going to leave New York. I think there is a 50-50 chance Caitlin Clark leaves Indiana after her rookie season.
The Liberty connection isn't just guessing either. Clark picked New York Liberty guard Sabrina Ionescu number 3 overall in the All-Star draft. That's not just a basketball decision. That's Clark showing respect for a player who's been in her shoes, dealing with similar pressure and expectations. The mutual respect between Clark and Liberty players is obvious, and it's something she's clearly not feeling with her current coaching staff. White's approach to Clark's playing time has been questionable at best. White said she likes the ability to have the main ball handlers on the floor, and specifically mentioned not wanting Clark to play under pressure 90 for feet the entire time she's on the floor. This is your franchise player we're talking about, the person who single-handedly made the entire WNBA's profile better. And you're worried about her playing too much. The coaching philosophy clash is becoming more obvious by the day, Clark said plainly. I think we need to do a better job of getting me the ball when we're running fast, whether somebody is there or not. I think there's a good balance of playing me without the ball and also getting the ball in my hands. That's when I'm the best, when we're running fast. That's not a request, that's Clark telling her coach exactly what she needs to succeed, and White's response: keep trying to make her play without the ball. The injury situation is becoming a real concern, and White's handling of it has been less than great. Clark has never had a lower shooting percentage or three-point percentage in any 5-game span of her young WNBA career. When your star player is struggling, you change your system to help them. You don't just shrug and say you're not worried about their shooting. Let's talk about the big problem in the room, Clark's contract situation. She's in her second year, which means she's got time to think about her future. The Liberty isn't just a well-run organization. They're a championship-level team that knows how to make the most of talent. The Liberty recently sold a small part of the team at a $450 million valuation, the richest valuation ever for a women's sports team. That's an organization that invests in winning. Compare that to the Fever's approach. The Fever went 5-5 this season without Clark, most recently falling to the Los Angeles Sparks 89-87. They're completely dependent on her, yet they can't seem to keep her healthy or use her effectively when she is healthy. That's not a sustainable model for success. The writing is on the wall when you look how other teams view Clark versus how her own team treats her. Clark's return game against the Liberty averaged a point a million viewers, tying for the second most watched game of the WNBA season. She's must-watch television, yet her own coach treats her like she's just another player who needs to fit into the system. White's comments after wins often feel like she's trying to downplay Clark's impact. After the Fever's big win over the Aces, White was more focused on the team's defensive performance than acknowledging Clark's leadership from the bench. Even when Clark is injured and cheering on her teammates, White can't give her proper credit.
You can see, and this is one of the more important things. You see this right here? You see this right here? This is Caitlin's agent. This is Caitlin Clark's agent.
The Liberty connection becomes even more interesting when you consider the coaching staff. As part of the All-Star game, Clark's team was set to be led by New York Liberty head coach Sandy Brondello. That's not just a coincidence, and that's Clark getting a taste of what coaching at the highest level looks like. Here's what really gets me: White's comments about Clark's return timeline. White shared that Clark still hasn't gone full speed in a practice or live defensive group despite working through rehabilitation phases. This is after Clark has already dealt with multiple injuries this season. A competent coaching staff would have figured out how to manage their star players' workload by now. The most damning evidence of White's disconnect with Clark comes from the offensive philosophy. White said her biggest concern is when we bring her back, how do we continue to keep our ball movement and just get the ball going? Not just side to side, but baseline to baseline. Your biggest concern should be getting your best player back to 100% and letting her dominate, not figuring out how to make her fit into your system. The Liberty, meanwhile, understand star power. They've got Breanna, Stewart, and Sabrina Ionescu, and they've built their system around making the most of those talents. They don't try to make their stars fit into some predetermined mold. They adapt to get the best out of their players. Clark's frustration has been visible all season. After suffering her latest groin injury, Clark was visibly emotional as she went to the Fever bench and placed a towel over her head. That's not just physical pain. That's the frustration of a player who sees her career being mismanaged. The contrast between how Clark performs when healthy versus when she's dealing with injury issues is stark. When fully healthy, Clark had 14 points and 13 assists as the Fever scored a franchise record 64 points in the first half. But when she's dealing with nagging injuries and questionable coaching decisions, she struggles to find her rhythm. White's handling of Clark's All-Star situation perfectly shows the problem. When asked about Clark's participation in All-Star festivities, White said, "Caitlin and her team will make decisions when it comes to All-Star. For me, it's a big deal for us to have All-Star in Indianapolis. And of course, with Caitlin being a focal point of all of that, she's basically passing the responsibility, instead of taking responsibility for her players' health." The Liberty's approach to veteran leadership and player development is night and day compared to the Fever's. They've got a proven track record of making the most of talent and winning championships. The Fever, they're still trying to figure out how to use the most talented player in the league. What makes this situation even more infuriating is White's apparent inability to read the room. When you have a player of Clark's caliber dealing with injury issues, you don't make statements about ball movement and system integration. You focus on getting her healthy and building around her strengths. The fact that White keeps talking about fitting Clark into her system instead of adapting the system to Clark's strengths shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what she has. The injuries aren't just physical setbacks, they're mental ones, too. Clark came into the league with an iron will and unshakable confidence. But when you're constantly dealing with physical issues and a coaching staff that doesn't seem to fully grasp your value, that confidence can erode. The emotional reaction we saw after her latest injury wasn't just about the physical pain. It was about the frustration of feeling like her career is being mismanaged. Let's address the elephant in the room, the reported conversations between Clark, her agent, and Liberty players. When agents start having conversations with other organizations, that's not just friendly networking, that's business. Clark's agent wouldn't waste time on meaningless conversations, especially when their client is dealing with ongoing issues with their current team. The timing of these conversations is particularly telling. They're happening while Clark is dealing with injury issues and coaching philosophy clashes. That's not a coincidence. That's Clark's camp exploring their options, because they're not satisfied with the current situation in Indiana. White's public comments about Clark's injuries have been consistently tone-deaf. Calling a groin injury that leaves your star player in tears a little something is the kind of statement that makes players question whether their coach truly understands or cares about their well-being. It's the kind of statement that makes agents start making phone calls to other organizations. The contrast between how the Liberty organization operates and how the Fever operate is stark. The Liberty understand that championship organizations are built around making the most of their star players' strengths. They don't try to make Breanna Stewart or Sabrina Ionescu fit into some predetermined system. They build systems that allow those players to dominate. The Fever's approach under White has been the opposite. Instead of building around Clark's unique talents, they've tried to make her fit into their existing framework. That's backwards thinking that demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of how to build a championship-caliber organization. Clark's agent being present during conversations with Liberty players isn't just coincidental networking, it's strategic positioning. When you're dealing with a coach who doesn't seem to fully appreciate your client's value and can't keep them healthy, you start exploring other options. That's exactly what appears to be happening here. The most frustrating aspect of this entire situation is that it was completely preventable. White had the opportunity to build something special with Clark from day one. Instead, she's created a situation where her star player is constantly injured, frustrated with the coaching philosophy, and potentially looking elsewhere for her future. When you look at successful coach-superstar relationships throughout sports history, they're built on mutual respect and understanding. The coach adapts their system to maximize the star's strengths, while the star buys into the overall team concept. What we're seeing in Indiana is a coach who expects her star to adapt to her system without making corresponding adjustments. The writing is on the wall, and anyone who's been paying attention can see it. Clark's frustration with the injury situation, combined with White's tone-deaf responses and questionable coaching decisions, has created a perfect storm. The Liberty are positioned to take advantage of this situation, and they have the organizational competence to do so. The Fever better wake up before it's too late. Clark's patience has its limits, and the Liberty are offering everything Indiana isn't: competent coaching, championship culture, and proper star treatment. Stephanie White's karma is coming, and it's wearing a New York Liberty jersey.